Thanks for joining me today, and welcome to the introductory video of a 10-part series of messages where we will be talking about each of the 8 individual pieces of the armor of God. The basis for these messages is the last portion of the 6th chapter of the book of Ephesians, as the Apostle Paul wraps up his letter to the Christians in Ephesus. So let's jump right into our study by reading what Paul wrote to the Ephesian church in verses 11 through 20 of chapter 6. Starting with verse 11. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore, put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground. And after you have done everything, to stand. Stand firm then, with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. In addition to all this, take up the shield of faith with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God, and pray in the Spirit on all occasions with all kinds of prayers and requests. With this in mind, be alert and always keep on praying for all the Lord's people. Pray also for me, that whenever I speak, words may be given me, so that I will fearlessly make known the mystery of the gospel, for which I am an ambassador in chains. Pray that I may declare it fearlessly as I should. You know, it's true, friends, that we need armor for protection when we go into battle. You may not think that you are at war, but Paul is telling the Ephesians that they are in fact in a war. And nothing has changed since then. Please understand, if you follow Jesus, you are at war with evil. But here's the thing. It's a war where we can't always see exactly what or who we are fighting against. So then it is vital to understand why we need armor and who and what this unseen enemy is. So let's read verse 12 again. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. You know, the very first thing we see here is that our struggle is not against flesh and blood. It's against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. The King James Version calls it rulers of the darkness of this world, against the spiritual wickedness in high places. High places. That could have a different meaning other than heavenly realms, right? The NIV seems to imply that the heavenly realms is different. High places could mean positions of authority and influence, and that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Because we are constantly being influenced by the rulers of the darkness of this world. Governments, and also spiritual wickedness in high places. You know, that could be all forms of media nowadays, right? Friends, we are living in the age of information. There's never been a time like ours in the history of the world. Because of the internet and other forms of technology, the amount of information available to us on a moment's notice has exploded exponentially over the past few years. We can't seem to be able to get away from it, mostly because we really don't want to. Because information is the fuel that the world runs on nowadays, and it can become addictive. People are being constantly bombarded with information nowadays, and that's really not good at all. But why is that not good? Isn't it great to be able to get information quickly? No, not really, because most of the information we encounter is some truth mixed with lies. The result is that truth is diluted and becomes almost unrecognizable. It's really just too much for any of us to handle most of the time. That creates stress and it causes friction among people. Just look what's going on today with everything. It's always a controversy. You know, Genesis chapter 1, verse 27 tells us that God created us in his own image. But he didn't create the human mind to process all the information that is available nowadays. Friends, we do not have the mind of God. So Satan takes advantage of our limitations to deceive us with his lies. Acts 3:15 says that Jesus is the author of life. So if Jesus is the author of life, then surely Satan is the author of confusion. Now let's read the last two sentences from the Gospel of John, chapter 8, verse 44. It says that he, meaning Satan, was a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language because he is a liar and the father of lies. Friends, we must understand that because the devil is the father of lies, he uses the information available in these unique times to first wound us and then to cripple us. There will be no turning back from where we are, so it will only get worse and worse. Satan and his hordes of demons are our foe, and we are fighting in the fight of the ages. This is a very important time in the history of the world. Make no mistake, friends, we are in a fight to the finish for our eternal souls and those of our families, friends, co-workers, and our communities. The Apostle Paul tells us that here in the 6th chapter of his letter to the church of Ephesus that we need to take what we need to take with us into the fight. So we have to carry some weapons into this battle. And so there are 8 pieces of God-given armor that we can and must use to protect us so that we can gain the victory promised by Jesus on the cross. So over the next 8 messages, we will be discussing each individual piece of armor and how it works to protect us from harm when we are attacked spiritually. The first will be courage. And we'll talk about that the next time. God's blessings on y'all. Until the next time. See you.